And welcome back, everyone, here live now from Fox. I appreciate everyone continuing to join us as we get you ready for night one of the DNC in Chicago. Let's take a live look right now inside of the United Center as we are getting more people now starting to file in ahead of tonight here, where we will see President Biden make his remarks. Just moments ago, we did see him get off Air Force One at O'Hare International Airport there, and coming down the steps was his wife, Jill Biden, as well. And again, going to be making that big speech, passing the torch from Biden to Harris tonight officially at the DNC. And again, we'll be bringing that to you here on Live Now from Fox. He's now taking Marine One to Soldier Field, where he then will take his motorcade to the United Center there. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on all of the movements tonight inside of the United Center. In the meantime, also in Chicago, a massive protest is happening, a Gaza War protest that continues. This is the march on the DNC that has just started. Do want to play out some remarks at a rally that was happening as well, and we'll put it all in boxes here for you.
Puerto Rico who seek racial, gender, economic, and racial justices. We are pro-indigenous, pro-black, pro-worker, pro-mujer, pro-Pachamama, and pro-immigrant. And proudly, our members join today's march to loudly say, no tech for ICE. Also, justice is our demand. No peace on stolen land. Justice is our demand. No peace on stolen land. When I say mi gente, you say presente. Mi gente, mi gente. Got one last one for you. I do it for my people. Yo lo hago con mi gente. I do it for my people. Yo lo hago con mi gente. Se la paso a Glow Choi. Thank you, guys.
Give it up for Danny! My name is Glow Choi. I am an immigrant justice organizer with Hana Center, and we are proud to be here to march against the DNC. We represent the low-income, undocumented, the Korean, the Asian, and the multi-ethnic. When I was a young boy immigrating to the U.S., I was told the story that if I worked hard enough, that I could achieve the American dream. Who here believes in that myth? Not me. No, the American dream is made possible to the few at the expense of the many, at the expense of a living nightmare for the rest of the world. The same forces that divided my home, my Korea, are the same ones occupying the lands of Palestine. We are here to be reminded that it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in office or a Republican, the imperialist forces of the U.S. must be stopped. For those who are undocumented, I remember asking, what does citizenship, what does legalization mean to me? And it doesn't mean being a part of this unjust system. It means demanding more each and every day and fighting for all of our liberation. Power to the people! No one is illegal! Power to the people! No one is illegal! Thank you.
One more time for Glow. warm welcome to our next speaker. We have Rama. Rama is from the National Students for Justice in Palestine, which builds the legacy and the impact of the student movement in occupied Turtle Island to help empower, unify, and support student organizers as they push forward demands for Palestine liberation and self-determination on their campuses. National SJP supports over 300 independent students organizations, including SGP Chicago. Welcome, welcome. Where's Rama? Viva, viva Palestina! Welcome, Rama.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are we doing? I'm going to put this here 1 second. Hello? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rama with National Students for Justice in Palestine. I just wanted to start off by thanking the March on the DNC Coalition, and particularly the U.S. Palestinian Community Network for all of their hard work in executing this march. Yeah, give it up for them. I also want to thank SDS, MSA, JVP, YDSA, and dissenters for their support and involvement in the official student contingent at this march. Raise your hands. Which has coordinated and facilitated the congregation of hundreds of students here today. Finally, I want to thank all my fellow students who have worked day in, day out to make Palestine unavoidable on their campuses, especially SGP Chicago for the work they're doing right here in Chicago. So before I continue, I want to get to know the audience a little. So if you're a student, can you make some noise? Woo! And if you've supported these students throughout the brutal repression they faced, can you also make some noise? And now this should be everybody. If you're tired of the Democratic Party's continuous enabling and supporting genocide against our people in Gaza for the last 11 months, let the DNC hear your rage. I'm proud to be among you all today, speaking as the voice of the student movement, affirming that students' commitment to Gaza and the liberation of Palestine is as strong as ever. We join you all today, the workers, the elders, youth, and children, to say loudly and clearly to the DNC that those who support and fund the genocide of our people are not welcome in our cities. For decades, students have been actively confronting Zionism and fighting for the liberation of Palestine on their college campuses under the banner of Students for Justice in Palestine. SJP has become central to the struggle, with hundreds of chapters, 200 alone founded after October, organizing under its banner. And since the start of the genocide, students in the US and across the world have risen to join the struggle for liberation and return, and their power has raised the ceiling for our struggle in a revolutionary way. We know that this is a clear testament to the consciousness and power of the students, and we see how when we are banded together with the broader masses, we have immense and endless power. We all stand here today to march on the DNC in Chicago, remembering the DNC back in 1968, also in Chicago. Back then, people were protesting the same thing we're protesting today, which is US imperialism. Both in 1968 and today, students have been at the forefront of the fight against US imperialism and the US empire and its destruction around the world. As we witness the horrors of the Zionist state's aggression in Gaza, we, the students, have turned our attention to those who are profiting off of the genocide, which is our administrators and universities. In April, we created a crisis through the student intifada that they could no longer ignore, as the student intifada erupted with hundreds of chapters erecting encampments on their campuses. Students across the entire globe, including our very own Northwestern, UChicago, and DePaul students, gave their administrators, they gave their administrators a choice. Either you fully divest from the Zionist entity, or you allow your university's reputation to absolutely shatter. And of course, administrators chose the latter as they brutalized their students using the police force, the very police force that's right here all around us, and academic repression. But guess what? The student intifada lives on. We are returning stronger than ever before as we head into the fall semester. As long as our administrators are going to continue profiting off of the genocide of our people, of the Palestinians, we will continue to confront them just as we're confronting the complicit Democratic Party today. All the genocide supporters must be confronted wherever they go, and we will not stop and we will not rest until ceasefire and ultimate liberation. It is clear that Harris's intention is to continue fueling this genocide, and her very own national security advisor recently stated that she does not support an arms embargo. 11 months and counting of genocide is an additional stain on the record of the Democratic Party and the U.S. government. And the blood of every single martyr in Gaza is on the hands of our politicians. Until we achieve an arms embargo, an end to the unconditional aid to the Zionist entity, a permanent ceasefire, and a liberated Palestine, we will remain in revolt both on our campuses and in the streets. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for SJP. All right, it's my honor now to introduce Casa Michoacán. We have Maggie Lugo, the executive director of Casa Michoacán. They celebrate Mexican culture and traditions to reaffirm.
All right, everyone. So that was just some of the moments there in Chicago as this Gaza War protest continuing just ahead of the DNC Night 1 at the United Center in Chicago. We'll take our first break of the hour. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments on Live Now. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. Such a cool shot right here in Chicago as President Biden about to step down from Marine One. They are in the parking lot right now of Soldier Field, home of the Chicago Bears, and now heading to the United Center soon. home of the Chicago Bulls there. So, of course, Chicago, such a big sports town, and some of the political action already taking place in these parking lots of the big sports teams here. So, in just moments, we will be seeing President Biden come down the steps there and, again, take part in the DNC festivities for night one. He will, of course, be the keynote speaker tonight, as he will be really passing the torch to Kamala Harris here. And we want to just show you a little bit of the coverage from Fox 32 Chicago as they are continuing right now.
Walk with me. This is the area where all the media is hanging out. So all of us are doing shows simultaneously. Isn't it amazing? So this is another network. And then if we keep going down, this is where a lot of the radio folks are hanging out. So, hi, what are you guys doing here?
We're the press information center.
Awesome. See, lovely volunteers. Are you guys volunteering? So what's it like for you guys to be out here hanging out in Media Row?
Exciting.
Is it?
Yes, and a little nervous because, you know, first time.
Yeah. This is both of our first conventions, so.
So how did you get involved?
I just applied to be a volunteer.
My daughter works for LiveNOW, so she hooked us up.
Yeah, that's great. So was it good people watching, would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I'm amazed at? The women who are walking around in high heels.
Tell me about it. Gym shoes.
Yeah, we have tennis shoes on, so.
We were told to wear gym shoes.
Yes. I'm so glad I wore gym shoes, but yeah, it's really something to see that. So thanks for talking to us. Love it. Okay, so you can see everyone else here. There are a lot of help desks. Oh my gosh, I see somebody that we all should know. Mike, come live with us. This is Mike Flannery. Do you guys remember him? Yes, of course. He just retired. He's good. Hey, Mike, good to see you. Okay, so tell us what it's like to be here at the United Center so far.
All right, coverage there in Chicago as we are now taking you back out live. Do want to show you President Biden now on the ground there in Chicago, coming from Marine One. They're in the parking lot of Soldier Field there, and some history being made as well for the president. He just got off the steps there of Marine One, and it is the first time flying on the new Marine One model, the VH-92A Patriot. So that was pictured there, and then we saw that all take part there just moments ago here on Live Now from Fox. Again, you see President Biden there with the Illinois governor, and you got Senator Dick Durbin there as well. And again, big moment here for President Biden, and really his congressional history all here, coming to a symbolic end, really, DNC night one, even though he will have 5 more months in office. But really this marking the moments here where the goodbyes will be happening for President Biden. All right there. So we are keeping an eye on a lot of different factors here for you, taking you now back out inside of the United Center. And looks like we are going to be getting some remarks here from Chicago now to New York. We take you with the big news of the day. Former Representative George Santos pleaded guilty today to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft, avoiding a criminal trial that was set to begin next month. Though Santos originally faced 23 felony counts, his lesser plea is still set to carry jail time. Aggravated identity theft carries a 2-year mandatory minimum here. So you could see the big media presence that is happening right now. And we got George Santos speaking right now. So let's listen on Live Now from Fox.
With honor and to uphold the values that are essential to our democracy. And in that regard, I failed you. I know that my actions have caused disappointment, frustration, and a loss of faith in me, and for that I'm truly sorry. I also want to acknowledge the many people who have stood by me during this difficult time, my family, friends, and legal team. Your support has been a source of strength, and I am determined to repay your faith in me by becoming a better person. Moving forward, I am dedicated to making amends for the wrongs I have. I know that my actions have caused disappointment, frustration, and a loss of faith in me, and for that I'm truly sorry. I also want to acknowledge the the many people who have stood by me during this difficult time, my family, friends, and legal team. Your support has been a source of strength, and I am determined to repay your faith in me by becoming a better person. Moving forward, I am dedicated to making amends for the wrongs I have committed. I understand that there are legal consequences for my actions, and I accept them fully. This plea is not just admission of guilt, it's an acknowledgement that I need to be held accountable, like any other American that breaks the law. I hope that by facing these consequences head on, I can begin to demonstrate my commitment to change and to earning your forgiveness. I do not ask for forgiveness, as I know that must be earned through actions, not words. I want to be a part of restoring the integrity that I helped diminish, and I will work tirelessly to regain the trust of those I have left. As I move forward, I am committed to living a life that reflects the values I should have upheld all along. Truth and integrity. I know that rebuilding trust will take time and that my actions will always be a part of my history. However, I am determined to use this experience as a turning point in my life, one that will guide me to make better choices and to be an exemplary member of my community.
George, how difficult was that for you to do?
Former representative speaking out there, just happening live right here on Live Now from Fox. Getting a little out of bounds there, but we are getting some news that happened inside of the courtroom just moments ago as well. Santos spoke in court at 3:39 p.m. He was emotional and his voice was cracking, much like we heard there just outside of the courthouse as well. He spoke very quickly, in part saying, I participated in a scheme, interstate wires, to obtain money, January 2022, Eastern District with Nancy Marks, list of donors and family members who did not donate, and also used names of friends and family donating to campaign to meet threshold by the NRCC. The judge asked, how do you plead on count 2? Santos said guilty. Judge also said, how do you plead on count 6? He pled guilty there as well, though. So Santos, again, the former Republican representative in New York, pleading guilty and avoiding a trial that was set to begin next month. The guilty plea puts a bookend on the dramatic rise and fall of Santos, who flipped a New York House district from blue to red back in 2022 and was hailed as the first openly gay Republican who is not an incumbent to win a House seat there. So we'll have much more coverage of this for you a little bit later on Live Now from Fox as well. Let's take another 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us, as always. Do want to take you back out now to Chicago, where they are continuing to cover the Gaza War protests that are happening ahead of night one of the DNC. Let's go on to some of the coverage. Fox 32 in Chicago right now.
As far as artificial intelligence really kind of influencing the way some people think, because yes, not everybody is as versed in AI and spotting the fakes. I'll tell you right now, if the person has like 6 fingers, that's usually a sign that it's not real. But a lot of people can't decipher between what's real and what's not on social media. So how do you combat that as a campaign?
It's really difficult, and to the point that you made, this is the first election where AI is going to be a real factor. Think back to 2016, right? When Donald Trump won the presidency, he used Twitter to his advantage. That was the technological tool that he seized upon, and he used it to get around the conventional media, and it really helped Donald Trump win that election. And Twitter's still there, X is still there, but now we're talking about an entirely different type of technology where, with AI, you can create reality. So, these Taylor Swift images, they look real. And obviously the mainstream media is going to filter those out and say this isn't real. But think about the other ways that those messages can get out. False messages travel much more quickly than real messages, right? Because they spread around the world. So campaigns have to be smart. They have to find ways of confronting the false information. But it is stunning how good it is. And I think we should anticipate the closer we get to the election, we're going to see more and more of these. Probably not from the campaigns themselves, but probably from supporters who are going to do this to try to shape and change reality. So again, unprecedented. We haven't seen this before in a presidential election.
This, of course, is the Democrats' week, but what do the Republicans do this week to keep, some eyes on them as well?
Well, I think Trump has to rethink how they're approaching the campaign. So since Harris has come in, I think they've made a number of missteps. And in particular, the president has not been particularly strong about staying on message. So I wouldn't be surprised if the campaign, the Trump campaign, uses this week to sort of rethink about how they're going to approach this. And in particular, how Donald Trump is going to campaign and reach out to the people. He's been off message. He's been sloppy. So I think they can use this time to regroup and maybe not even do anything publicly. Maybe they just stay behind the scenes so that as soon as the convention is over, they can get back out and stay on message, right? At the end of the day, this is likely to be a very, very close election. And the Republican Party, and Donald Trump in particular, has to be better about staying on message and staying on target. And this might be a good week to sort of reassess where they're at.
All right, Professor Mark, always good to see you. Sit tight just in case, because I like talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, my man. Thank you. Want to check back in with someone else I love talking to, Dawn Hasbrook, joined by a special guest. So who you got with you, Dawn?
I have Kelly Wright. He's actually been around a long time. He's covered a number of conventions, Terrence. You should remember him as well. But he was one of the first black male anchors on network news. And so he's here with me taking the time. He has a show called America's Hope with Kelly Wright. So I'm catching him between those interviews. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. So good to see you.
It's great to see you.
It's been too long.
It has been so long. So it's nice to see you. So let's just jump right in. What number convention, if you can remember, is this for you? A stumper right away, huh?
Yeah, I think it's...
More than 10? I mean, how many have you done
It's about 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 10.
Yeah. So how
I'm not that old.
We just met a couple years ago. So how is this convention just alone, the energy? It's just getting started. How is it for you?
Everyone says that each convention is historical. This one really is.
Yeah.
Because of the way we've been led into this convention with the dramatic situation of the former president with that attempted assassination, and then just a short time later, the current president of the United States saying, I'm bowing out, here's the baton being passed to Vice President Kamala Harris, and then the energy totally changing for the Democrat Party. So both parties are now energized, and after this particular convention, I think the Democrats will go on to be extremely energized and motivated.
So what are you expecting tonight? Biden will officially pass the torch, and they'll sort of say a goodbye and a thank you to Biden tonight.
So without getting deep into the weeds, I spoke to someone who actually helps the president write his speeches, and this particular person said that this time I haven't. I have not seen his speech, and he's anticipating that the president will show his humility, at the same time take some hubris to talk about his legacy of public service. And so I asked him, what about his public service? He said, if you look at Joe Biden's history, he's the only person that he can think of that has served his entire lifetime serving the public. And that's something that people, I think, overlook.
Yeah.
So that, whether you like Joe Biden or not, because there are many people watching your show who are on the left, on the right, Republican, Democrat, and the eyes, toss all that out. This is a man who has literally served his country.
So let's talk about the name of your show, obviously, is America's Hope with Kelly Wright. So how do you get people hopeful? What do you talk about on that show to kind of keep up the hope, keep hope alive, as Reverend Jesse Jackson would say here in Chicago?
You're right, and I've known Jesse Jackson for many years, and I once wrote a song based on Keep Hope Alive.
Yeah, you were a producer too and a musician, right?
Musician, yeah, singer. But anyway, that's not it. But I created America's Hope because America, as I saw through my lens as a reporter and as a father, as a husband, was always deeply divided on race. And we've all paid a price for that. Corporately, individually, personally, spiritually, and it's brought us down. And now we're playing this cultural division. So I created America's Hope, not as a Pollyannish pie in the sky kind of hope, but one that's born where hope is really born. And that's in despair, that's in adversity, that's in the hard knocks. And as a result of that, just like you've heard Joe Biden talk about the hard scrabble life that he had in Scranton, Pennsylvania, out of that came his hope. Out of my own personal struggles, my hope. Every American, including you, can go back to a time in their life where they turned around because hope was prevalent and it prevailed and you kept it alive.
Absolutely.
And that's what America's Hope is about.
Well, you know, we've seen the protesters. Obviously, we're looking at video of them now, and you just spent some time in Israel. So you obviously covered this war. You know what's going on both sides. So from your perspective, how should this ticket handle that? You know, you were in Israel, you saw what was happening. So just from your perspective, what do you think the focus should be during this convention on that specifically?
This is a very painful time in Israel's history, in Gaza's history, but it's also one that's indicative of the hatred that exists there in the Middle East for this tiny country called Israel. And what happened on October 7th, 2023, many people glossed that over. And then when Israel retaliated, many people began to pounce on Israel. It reminded me of our own 9/11 when people attacked us for the reason that we were Americans, attacked us in such a way, and then when we stepped up to retaliate, the world came against us, saying, what are you doing? The same thing is happening here. Now, there is heartbreak on both sides. And after talking to the people there on both sides, the one thing I would bring this down to and why our government should be focused on bringing healing, I went into a Palestinian home. I could not videotape that because they were fearful of Hamas having reprisals against them. And when you have women and men sitting around and you're drinking Turkish coffee in Bethlehem, which is a Palestinian community, and they say, we're just done with the politics, we're done with the war, we want the same thing that every mother wants for their child, and that is for their children to grow up and pursue their dreams without war, without politics, not only for us, but also for Israelis, for Jews, Protestants, Catholics. And people forget that on October 7th, it wasn't just Jews who were attacked. It was also Christians, it was also Muslims. Israel is a beautiful place.
Do you think that they will focus at all on that here, maybe tonight or another night here during the convention?
You know, I would like to think so, but I know that the Democrat Party has been put upon because of the fact that President Joe Biden has stood at right beside Israel. And yet we've seen on our college campuses where people have protested because they want to say, well, what about the Palestinians? And yeah, I get that. What about the Palestinians?
There are a lot of young people behind
a lot of young people behind that movement, but to understand the history of it, and it's too long of a story to get in on this interview. But the bottom line is I think the administration will have to assess how it's going to proceed. And I think at this particular point, especially with a lot of people in America who want to see America and Israel stay strong allies, that will be the day of reckoning to decide how they will proceed.
All right, let's talk about the hope in the title of your show, the hope among young people. What do you think the message should be to young people during this convention, some of whom are saying, I'm not going to vote. I don't like either side. You
encounter that just like I encounter that. It's heartbreaking to see that. And I would say to the young people that people died for this right to vote. The other thing I would say is, in this anxiety or this epidemic of anxiety, you've got a lot of young people saying, I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore. And so I would also say, if you're not going to drink anymore, vote some more.
Yes. That's a great note.
Making a difference. Okay.
That's right. America's Hope with Kelly Wright. You can Google it and find his show. Thank you for taking the time. I hope we can talk to you a little bit more later today.
I look forward to it.
That'd be great.
I'm getting buzzed. I got to go.
Yeah, you do.
All right.
You're busy
Much love
here.
to you.
Thank you so much.
Keep hope alive.
Yeah. Back to you guys.
Insightful conversation, Don. Thanks so much. We want to check in with Dane Placco now. He is marching with the protesters. Dane, where are you right now?
Yeah, the march is underway. Started about 15 minutes ago. We are at the corner of Washington Boulevard and Ashland. In fact, we're standing in the middle of Ashland Avenue. And show you what the intersection looks like right now. All those people you see standing there are still waiting to progress to the front of the line so they can begin marching westbound on Washington Boulevard. This is the game plan. They're going to be marching west on Washington, about a block up. They're going to be turning north on Hermitage, a fairly small residential street. That's only a block or so from the United Center itself. Then they're going to be going north to Maypole, west on Maypole, past the United Center on the north side of all the fencing that's been erected there, to Damon Avenue, north on Damon to Lake, and then they're going to march eastbound on Lake back here to Union Park. Now, the crowd has been growing throughout the day. When we first arrived here this morning, just a couple of hundred people. I'd say an hour ago there were maybe a couple thousand. Now there are clearly several thousand people who have shown up for this this march. It is multiple people and causes and reasons to be marching. The largest part, of course, is the pro-Palestinian aspect of it. A lot of people very angry about the Democratic Party continuing to support Israel and the U.S. government policy of giving money to Israel as it conducts its war in Gaza. But there are also people here fighting for immigration rights, and also many people on the abortion issue, women's bodily autonomy. The superintendent of police, Larry Snelling, is also here. In fact, he was at this intersection we're standing at right now about 15 minutes ago when the march started. I saw him. He said hello. We walked over and talked to him briefly. He said that with a big grin on his face, everything is under control. I asked, how do you feel about how things are going to go here? He said, we feel very good about it. They have plenty of police on hand. So far, the crowd, while noisy, has been respectful. I only saw one person, a so-called agitator, kind of walking the line along here, urging people to not listen to the police instructions or not follow the mandated route mandated by the U.S. federal court. But most of the folks here appear to be going according to the game plan. They want their voices heard. They have plenty of signs. They are angry about multiple policies supported by the Democratic Party, but they don't want to get arrested. That's what they're telling me, is they don't feel as though that would be helpful to anybody to have a mass arrest right here. But we'll have to see. Again, you have a lot of people with different agendas within large groups like this. I would estimate, again, several thousand people. In fact, Ed, turn around. You can see there's still a large number of people trying to come this way down Washington Boulevard from the east. You see the Willis Tower in the background there. That crowd continues to stretch eastbound on Washington Boulevard, basically to the end of Union Park. They are very slowly shuffling forward now. Once they get past this intersection, they begin to pick up. I should also mention that the weather is really cooperative today. It's been bright and sunny, winds out of the north, cooler temperatures, but still you can see right there a lot of people bringing water, to the scene. Ed, if you can take a look at what this man is pulling, a wagon full of cooled water. We are seeing a lot of that around here. There are also a lot of first aid stations, nurses on patrol, keeping an eye on the crowd and making sure there are no any injuries, any problems, any heat stroke, although it would be difficult on a day like this, despite the very bright sunshine. So that's the scene here in Union Park. I know Nate Rogers is going to be at the front of this march. We're going to take up the back end of it and follow along. And we're also going to be looking to see whether there are any problems when they hit Hermitage. We'd mentioned before in some of our reporting over the last couple of weeks, one of the concerns of organizers was when they make that sharp right turn north and then a left turn back west past the United Center. They said their experiences with crowds this size, that can cause people to back up, and that can cause problems with people having to trample on lawns or stand on porches. So we're going to check that out a little bit later and see if any of that is happening. But so far, so good as the march begins west here on Washington Boulevard. Back to you.
So far, so good, and hopefully it stays that way. Dane, thanks for setting that scene for us. We want to go to Tia Ewing now in Humboldt Park. Tia, you're with another protest group.
Yeah, completely different scene than what Dane just showed you there, Terrence. We're here in Humboldt Park right now where the Poor People's Army has gathered. We were told about 1,000 people or more would show up here, but that is not the count that we're seeing. We're seeing about 100. We know that they're supposed to start marching in about 30 minutes. They're going to go from where we are right now, Division in California, over to Western to Madison, and Madison to the United Center. And there was a technicality in terms of their permit with the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago didn't let them know about the permit in time. And so as a result, that means this is one of the only groups that will get very close to the United Center. In fact, they'll go right up to the sidewalk of the United Center, where we know a lot of the Democratic leaders will be. We do know those speakers will start speaking at around 5:15 inside the United Center. And this group will be there watching as many of these people go inside the front doors of the United Center. Really, their message is pretty clear. They believe that no American should be poor. And in fact, they even talked about the war, the Israel-Hamas war, and how that is playing into poverty, saying that the U.S. is helping to fund that war, and asking the question, why couldn't that money go to making sure that people have food, stable housing? Those are some of the issues that they have with the government. And in terms of the government, they don't support Kamala Harris being president. They don't support Donald Trump being president. In fact, they support the third party, the Green Party. And in fact, Dr. Jill Stein was out here a little bit earlier. We did get a chance to speak with her. She says that she believes that a lot of Americans see the Green Party as a better option between the Republican and Democratic Party. Now, in terms of this protest of about 100 people now, we expect them to start marching at around 4. We will march with them. They do plan to wrap it all up for the night by 6. And of course, Terrence, we will be marching with them every step of the way. That is what we're seeing right now. Very calm in terms of this crowd. I'll send it back to you for now.
All right, Tia, thank you. Let us know as soon as things step off. All right, let's check in with Scott Schneider. He is at the United Center with a very special guest. Tell Professor I said what's up, Scott.
I will do that, Terrence. Yeah, so thrilled to have Professor Stephen Caliendo from North Central College with us. And the protesters are such a big part of the story here at the United Center. Yes, they are being held somewhat at bay, but there are echoes to 1968, the court battle over the permit and being allowed to be basically at the doorstep here. And yes, the argument is different. The battle is different, but we're expecting, who knows, maybe up to 100,000 protesters before the week is said and done. What do you make of the distraction and what needs to be done here this week, in particular for the Harris campaign?
Well, my suggestion is that they don't view it as a distraction. This is such an important part of the democratic process. First Amendment rights, people protesting, making their voices heard. This is a party that has, just like the Republican Party, has some factions in it.
Listening to some of the coverage there from Chicago, Fox 32. Now I just want to take you out live right now as you are seeing some active protests happening on the streets, these Gaza War protests that are continuing. We are going to take a 2-minute break on Live Now from Fox. When we come back, we'll get the latest weather update of severe flooding in the state of Connecticut. You're watching Live Now from Fox. The latest update coming up next. right, everybody, welcome back here to Live Now from Fox, and just take a look here at some of these scenes out of Connecticut. This is neighborhoods across the state. They're cleaning up right now after flash flooding destroyed roads and bridges, trapped dozens of people in homes and cars, and 2 people have died because of this flooding. Let's go out right now. Fox's Chelsea Torres is live for us in Southbury, Connecticut. Chelsea, what have you seen so far?
Mike, it still amazes me every single time when I see destruction like this. So just the power of flooding, flash floods of rain, even storm surges. You see so many different types of destruction from water itself. And here's a perfect example. You see this car behind me. I spoke to the homeowner of this vehicle, and he's actually 50 yards up this road. He said that car was parked in his driveway last night when he woke up this morning. After all the flooding went through, it pushed this car and another car further down the road. People that I've spoken to that grew up here say they've never seen anything quite like this. They're shocked, and a lot of people have even said it's terrifying seeing the type of destruction and damage that's been happening here throughout parts of Southbury and even Oxford in Connecticut. I spoke to the state's emergency management director, who says that they had over 100 water rescues just from Sunday's flooding, and 45 of those were just from one park alone. People were stranded in their vehicles, they were trapped and needed evacuation. Parts of the roads that you see that have really been completely destroyed look like that they've had just a chunk taken out of them because of the flooding that has come through and washed away a lot of these roads. A couple people that I talked to say that they're overwhelmed. One man said he was overwhelmed by just looking at all of the destruction. Another person said that it's almost like a wrecking ball. I mean, seeing these people's lives being completely destroyed, it looks like a tornado had hit through this area.
I seen cars off the road. It was like devastating, like what you see down in Florida or other states. This is like mind-boggling right now.
There's a lot of personal debris on here, so not only are you seeing the destruction of the the natural resources, you're seeing people's personal items here, and it's very sad.
It is very sad, and I actually found a family's photo album over here. I also saw some other pictures from somebody's home, so it just kind of gives you perspective of everything that was inside that home, completely washed out, damaged, destroyed. And a lot of these people that had the flooding inside their homes, yeah, maybe it's pushed out now, but now they're having to deal with that aftermath and figure out exactly what's next. How much cleanup do they really have to do, and is everything completely destroyed inside their homes? It just started pouring down a few moments ago. It started to let up, but I am hearing rumbles of thunder in the background. So that's expected a little bit later on today. Crews are out here. I've seen linemen, people. Actually, earlier, this entire area was covered by trees and down power lines. And now at this point, just crews are trying to clean up as much as they can before more rain comes. Mike?
Yeah, it's so fascinating and so scary all at the same time, just to see how much damage water can do when a fast amount comes at such a short period of time. And that video that you showcased today just perfectly showcases exactly what Mother Nature can bring when flooding happens.
Yeah, Mike, it really is scary. And as I mentioned, people use the word terrifying. And when you see the road just completely wiped away, that's when you realize, okay, this has a higher magnitude than people realize.
Yeah, truly, truly. Chelsea Torres, thanks so much for being with us this evening. We appreciate it, as always, from Connecticut on Live Now from Fox. Thanks so much. And we will take our final break here of the hour. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments on Live Now. Welcome back, everyone, to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Pace. Thanks again for being with us here. As always, do want to show you out in Chicago ahead of DNC Night 1. We do have the Gaza War protests that are continuing through the streets and getting closer to the United Center right now. We want to go back out to some of the coverage from Fox 32 in Chicago that continues to talk about the excitement that's building inside the United Center and what's happening on the outside as well.
Hey, Terrence, I'm here with Emily Song. For the Democratic National Convention. You have a big job. It's been busy, has it not?
That's right. We are finally here. It's game day for us. We've been preparing for this convention for over a year, so it's pretty surreal to actually be in it now, see Democrats arriving from all over the country. The excitement's really palpable, the city's buzzing, and we're really excited.
So how many times per hour does your phone ring?
I can't count. I can't count. If there's a number higher than infinity, that's it. But what I'll say is that the phone ringing off the hook is a reflection of the energy and excitement behind this convention. The city's really excited, Democrats are excited, and it's reflective of the energy and momentum behind this historic ticket, and we're really excited to carry that momentum into the convention and then use it for the last stretch of the campaign.
Well, a little behind the scenes I want to hear about. So when people are calling you, what are they asking during these 4 days?
People want to know the scoops, people want to know the program, and of course we're excited to share details as they get finalized, but of course we're always going to keep a couple surprises up our sleeves because we want to make sure that this convention is really reflective of who we are as a party, who we are as a country, and we want to make sure that no matter who you are, if you're watching on TV at home, if you're watching on your phone, on social media, you see yourself reflected in this program and you see the story of the Harris Walls ticket. So we're going to have an amazing program. That's what I can guarantee. It's going to be super engaging, no matter if you're in the hall, in the United Center, or watching from home.
I want to know who's on for tonight. It sounds like you don't have, well, you haven't released everyone yet. Is that right?
That's right. We can expect to hear from some heavy hitters. President Biden himself will be here speaking about his own records, making the case for his running mate, Vice President Harris, to be the next president of the United States. So we're going to hear him talk about his record. We're going to hear him talk about the Harris Walls agenda, and we're going to hear him lay out the stakes for this November's election. He has been a fearless leader. He's been really courageous and stepping down to put the country over himself. And now he is turning that energy and channeling it back into the campaign to make sure Vice President Harris gets elected.
Who's the musical artist tonight?
We just made some announcements. I think Jason Isbell is one of them, but I can guarantee there's a lot of special musical guests that will be appearing all throughout the week, but the energy is really electric. I've been inside the hall, I'm sure you have too, and I can just say the stage is fabulous. It's super, it's just a great visual, and I think the music will be a perfect couple to that.
Is Beyonce coming?
If you know about Beyonce, you let me know first, because that would be super exciting. But what I'll say is this is really a people-powered convention and a people-powered campaign, and of course, celebrities are amazing and that they can reach, unique audiences and they can speak to voters in a really direct way. But at the end of the day, we want this convention to be about the people. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And what about the final day on Thursday? Do you have the lineup for that outside of Vice President Harris?
Not anything to share yet, but what I can say is that Vice President Harris will speak to the country, introduce herself, really tell her story on her own terms, and accept the nomination here in the United Center, and we're really excited to have her here.
So I want to know how you came to get a job this big. How did it start for you?
I started my journey in politics at Everytown for Gun Safety. I was working with gun violence survivors, gun safety advocates, and really just helping to, spread the word that gun violence is really a public health issue. And so we were, working with the volunteers to make sure we were passing gun safety legislation across the country. Worked in communications and kind of made my way over to traditional politics, and really, really blessed and honored to have this job.
So the one before this big job, you were a regional press secretary. Is that what you were telling me?
That's
for the
correct.
Convention?
Regional press secretary at the Democratic National Committee. It's the national party based in D.C., working with state parties all across the country who are really the backbone of this party and who, work to get Democrats elected up and down the ballot. Of course, all eyes are on the presidential election this November, but we know that the work is really done in the states, in the counties, in the local, areas across the country. And so it was really great to support those state parties and make sure that they were helping helping to fan out the message and, work from the same songbook.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here.
Good luck with everything. I know it's been so busy, Emily. Thanks for taking the time, and your phone must be on silent because it's not ringing at this moment.
Thanks for having me.
Back to you guys.
All right, Dawn, thanks for asking about Beyonce, by the way. All right, we want to check in with Nate Rogers now. He is at the start of that protest we saw. He's at Union Park. Nate, what can you tell us? What's going on around you?
Yeah, hey, Terrence. It's kind of hard for me to hear you. We just arrived at Park 578. That's where the group has now landed after we left Union Park, I'd say a little bit after 3 o'clock. You can see the group filing in right now. We have not gotten an official number from authorities just yet. We have heard some numbers floating around between 2,000 to 5,000 attendees at this very first initial rally for the DNC, at least today that is. A lot of their chants have been focused on the war in the Middle East, but one of the things that we have seen is there have been demonstrators from all over the country that have come in by plane, by bus, for today's rally. We've spoke to folks as young as 14 years old participating, to one woman who was in her 80s saying even though their journeys may be different, the call is the same for a ceasefire in the Middle East. Now, the thing that these folks want us to understand is, with all of the eyes on Chicago right now, with the delegates here in Chicago, as well as with so many city and state leaders, they want to capitalize on all of that media and make sure that their calls for peace, their calls for justice will be heard. We do know that police superintendent, I should say, Larry Snelling, and his top brass led this event. They were in front of all of the protesters. He told us, he spoke to media a little bit before the march kicked off, saying, quote, "We have no fear. There have been no incidents." My photographers and I, we walked the entire 1 mile march route. Everything appeared to be peaceful, just folks chanting, raising their signs and flags. Many of those signs that you see out here continue to say, "Stand with Palestine," and "End to the war," "Stop police crimes," and so many more. It is our understanding now that the group will host another rally here on the city's west side at Park 578, and then they will retreat back to Union Park. Of course, we'll stay here and keep you updated on air and online with any new developments. But that really is the latest, a massive scene of people with flags and signs in hand now getting to the park. We hope to learn more a little later. That's the latest on the west side. Nate Rogers, Fox 32 Chicago.
All right, Nate, thank you. And we also have reports that independent presidential candidate Cornel West is among the group of protesters out there. We will continue to stay on top of the DNC for you. Again, a full night of speakers playing, of course, President Biden being the last to address the crowd there at the United Center. More coverage of the Democratic National Convention when we come back. Stick with us here on Fox 32 Chicago. Yeah, thank you. Let us know as soon as things step off. All right, let's check in with Scott Schneider. He is at the United Center with a very special guest. Tell Professor I said what's up, Scott.
I will do that, Terrence. Yeah, so thrilled to have Professor Stephen Caliendo from North Central College with us. And the protesters are such a big part of the story here at the United Center. Yes, they are being held somewhat at bay, but there are echoes to 1968, the court battle over the permit and being allowed to be basically at the doorstep here. And yes, the argument is different, the battle is different, but we're expecting, who knows, maybe up to 100,000 protesters before the week is said and done. What do you make of the distraction and what needs to be done here this week, in particular for the Harris campaign?
Well, my suggestion is that they don't view it as a distraction. This is such an important part of the democratic process. First Amendment rights, people protesting, making their voices heard. This is a party that has, just like the Republican Party, has some factions in it. And there is a variety of viewpoints that together make up what the Democratic National Committee means and what the Democratic Party means. Their voices are important. And so I hope that there are elected officials some of the superdelegates that are out there meeting with the protesters and actually not viewing them as a distraction.
This is a 4-night event, but tonight is really about Joe Biden, and it's about a passing of the torch. What do you expect to hear from the president tonight?
Yeah, I love that. We want to see his tone. One of the things that I was thinking about this morning, Scott, is that, you know, I'll be interested to see what his demeanor is like. Not that he's not happy or sad. I don't mean that. I mean how much energy is there. You know, all the pressure is off for the last 3 weeks. He doesn't have to run for president any longer. But this is a guy who just a month ago we thought was going to be here accepting a nomination. And it might be very interesting to see him in such a way that it will be hard to believe that he was here to be accepting a nomination. So I think what we have to have some closure. I think there's going to be some folks here that are upset with the way things happened because they were very big Biden supporters and thought that he should have stayed with it. That seems to have healed a lot over the last 3 weeks. But here's a chance in formality to sort of make that happen, to close the book, and to really give the president his flowers for all the years of public service that he's offered.
And we know he's going to talk a lot about his record, and you know his career is just it's historic, and what he's done in Washington. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. How much do you expect him to sort of defend Kamala Harris? Because a lot of what she's going to be talking about over the next 79 days is a defense of Joe Biden and the policies that led us to where we are today.
He'll set it up very nicely. Because he's in a position, as he did in the State of the Union address not so many months ago, although it seems like years ago, to talk about the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. So he'll focus on that part, set her up, and then that gives the speakers over the next 3 days time to establish Kamala Harris as her own candidate. So she's not running away from the fact that she's part of the Biden-Harris administration, but now it's the Harris. It's the Harris-Walz ticket, which is different than the administration. And so it's a difficult line I think she's going to have to walk to sort of celebrate what she's done, but also if there's any distance between her and the president on things, to be clear about it without throwing him under the bus.
It's been a minute since you and I have spoken about this whirlwind, particularly that Kamala Harris has experienced over the past 4 to 5 weeks. As a historian, as somebody who teaches young people in a classroom, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing having conversations with young folks because their perspective is a little different than ours is, right? We started talking about 1968. They can understand 1968, but they didn't live through 1968, and it's not the same thing. But Kamala Harris has that famous quote about not falling out of the coconut tree. She talks about her mother, and it's really interesting that you can that plays around social media, so they know that, and it's a wonderful entrance into talking about context, talking about how everything is contextual, that nothing occurs in a vacuum, and so they don't have to have the lived experience of knowing exactly how politics has worked prior to, I mean, really Barack Obama, maybe when they were very young, but they can understand that everything has a context, and then it really opens the door for teachers, for professors to have those conversations with them.
Just a little while ago, I spoke to a YouTuber. She's got more than 2 million followers. She came from Los Angeles, and I asked her if she had any trepidation about coming here to Chicago for this event, and she said, no, not really. But part of me didn't know if I really believed what she was saying, because I watched the national media.
That's right.
And a lot of the narrative is it's Chicago, and it can be dangerous, particularly after the sun goes down. How concerned are you about what we're seeing play out outside? And we're seeing Joe Biden, who's now entering the building. It looks like he's very near to the floor, or I mean, he might actually be on the stage right now. But as we watch the president and his preparations for what he's going to be saying tonight, how concerned are you, Professor, over the image that Chicago sets as it takes the stage nationally?
Well, I can relate to a YouTuber with 2 million followers. I think I have 110 on my YouTube page. So thank all of you, including my mother, for following along. Look, she is susceptible to all the national media about Chicago, which really, the word Chicago gets used as a heuristic for violence. And so it isn't just crime, it's specifically violent crime, it's street crime, and I would argue that it's racialized violent crime. It's black crime is the way Chicago gets used in the national media. This is, Brandon Johnson's going to be here to welcome everybody tonight. This is an opportunity to show off our city.
What's his message?
His message is going to be welcome, but it's also going to be, we hope you really enjoy the city and we hope you come back. Look, it wasn't Brandon Johnson who brought NASCAR here, it was Lori Lightfoot, but it's a similar kind of argument. Let's bring folks who might be afraid of Chicago or don't really understand what we're doing up here, come up and realize this is a great city.
And since we're staring at the president here as he prepares to make his remarks tonight, again, the passing of the baton is one thing. but I'm anticipating an enormous response to Joe Biden himself, this thank you, Joe moment. Can you sort of conceptualize what it is that he has done in allowing Kamala Harris to sort of take the mantle for the party and going forward in this country?
Look, anybody who was concerned or didn't think it was right for Joe Biden to be subtly pushed out of the race has probably had their mind changed as they've seen the polls, as they've seen the energy, as they've seen the fundraising happen over the last month. So this is an opportunity for people to acknowledge, the people in the room, I mean, that is Democrats, to acknowledge that this was a selfless act, that it was an act you could argue of patriotism, but certainly at least an act for the party. If there was a better chance to beat Donald Trump, then he took advantage of that. I'm glad you mentioned, though, the slogan, thank you, Joe. One of the things I want viewers to watch, if you haven't watched a lot of conventions, is the messaging on the floor. And people don't come in with these signs, right? So the signs are going to be very clear. And for different speakers, there's different signs, and they will be told to raise them at certain times. I mean, the visuals that you get, it's all very, very well constructed, well planned. They did a great job in Milwaukee with all of that, and I'm sure we'll see that tonight.
And then lastly, Professor Caliendo, again, with Chicago setting the stage for this launch in the last 70-plus days for Kamala Harris, what does she need as far as a bump in your mind to really make this a race going down to the wire? Because we know they're neck and neck right now.
Neck and neck right now, especially in the swing states where it really matters. I think if one thing has changed over the last few weeks, the chance of Donald Trump winning the popular vote has probably evaporated, which isn't that surprising. He hadn't won the popular vote the last two elections. You don't have to win the popular vote to win the Electoral College. But the Electoral College looks tighter and tighter than it did a month ago. There will be a bump. I don't know how sustained convention bumps are. I mean, I do know how long historically, but this is unique in a couple of ways. Number one, we have a candidate that hasn't been a candidate for very long, of course. But the other thing, that even if that weren't the case, this is a very late national party nominating convention. It's very late. And it's late because the incumbent party gets to have their convention second. The Republicans picked a pretty late date as it was. And then the Olympics were 2 weeks. So it was like this got pushed way into students are starting back to college. Students are starting back to school. I mean, we were used to having these things in July, right? And so the time between, and then if you add in early voting, right, the time between the convention and when people actually start casting ballots is much shorter than when you had a July convention and then everybody just lined up on November 3rd or whatever it was to vote for president.
It's going to be interesting. Professor Stephen Caliendo, North Central College, always a pleasure to see you, and in person.
Good to see you.
In particular. Yes, let's send it back to the studio. Actually, we're going to send it to Casey on the Meg Mile.
All right, Scott, thank you.
And that so far, at least based on what we're seeing here, appears to be the case. We've not seen any problems with people, any defacing of property, any throwing of bottles or cans. People are loud, they're noisy, they're activated and even agitated, but they are all behaving well. That's the scene at the protest march right now. We're going to stay with it, and we'll get back to you a little bit later in the newscast.
I'm Tia Ewing on the ground here in Humboldt Park. We were expecting this march to step off at around 4. It hasn't stepped off just yet. Let me step out of the way so you can kind of see the lay of the land here. There's a band playing, and there's about 100 people right now that will participate in this. Will go down Division. We're actually at Division in California. It will go down Division over to Western and then Western to Madison. Now, what's different about what you're seeing right now is that this protest group, the Poor People's Army, they will get the closest in comparison to any protest group. They will actually be on the sidewalk right outside of the United Center, and they hope to have their voices heard. They have an issue with how people are treated in this country in terms of poverty. They feel that no American should be poor. They have a problem with the U.S. being a part of funding for the wars, 2 of them that are going on right now, the Israel and Hamas war, and also the war between Ukraine and Russia. And we also got a chance to hear from them on where they stand in terms of the party. They don't support President Kamala Harris being a nominee. They don't support Donald Trump. They actually support the Green Party. And in fact, Dr. Jill Stein was here in support of the protesters, and we got a chance to talk to her about what she says is the mismanagement of the U.S. health system. Take a listen.
This election is a perfect storm for change. The American people are done being thrown under the bus.
If you had 3 top things that you would put on the list that need to be changed,
So, well, first and foremost is health care for everyone as a human right. And what's little known is that we can actually save $500 billion a year by moving to a Medicare-type system.
Now, these protesters that you see that are getting ready to step off here, they've made their rounds. They already were at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Many of them actually walked here to Chicago, taking that 100-mile trip, and then they camped out here in Humboldt Park over the weekend. Some of them saying they didn't get a warm welcome from some of Chicago's leaders, including the alderwoman that actually covers a portion of this area of Humboldt Park. She's over the 26th Ward, Jessie Fuentes. She did have some concerns about them setting up an encampment in a park where the unhoused also have encampments here. Of course, we will be with them every step of the way as they step off, going through some pretty, I would say, extremely difficult route in comparison. When you look over, I want Quan to come with me over here. This is a pretty busy street, so it's going to be very interesting to see how police can coordinate to allow these protesters to march through really a busy area of town here in the city of Chicago, going through Humboldt Park and then ending up at the United Center. Of course, we'll have much more. You can follow us on air on Fox32Chicago.com, also on our app, and right here on air as well. I'll send it back to you, Terrence, in the studio.
All right, Tia, thank you.
Well, as Democrats kick off the DNC, Republican candidate Donald Trump is taking his own campaign across the country.
Today, he stopped in Pennsylvania, spoke about his plans for the economy.
Tariffs on foreign countries go up. Taxes on American workers and families come down. According to one recent study, a small 10% tariff on foreign-made products will allow massive tax cuts for working families, create more than 3 million American jobs, raise household incomes by 6%.
Trump's plan is making a focus on, quote, unleashing American energy through preserving the tax cuts he signed into law back in 2017. Now, Harris spoke Friday afternoon about the economic proposals she is rolling.
All right, everyone, you are watching Live Now from Fox. We appreciate everyone continuing to join us. Live look here in Chicago as the Gaza War protests do continue. Let's take a 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us as always. I do want to take you back out to Chicago. Earlier today, we had the mayor of the city of Chicago, as well as police and the Secret Service, give an update on security for this big week in Chicago with the DNC.
Great partner in this.
And good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
First, also, allow me to thank my leadership team and what a great job they're doing. As you see to my left, we have Chief standing here, Chief Dwayne DeVries, who has overall command of the DNC. We have Chief Antoinette Ursitti and Chief Yolanda Talley. They've all done a great job. Now standing here, Chief Angel Navales, who's also doing a great job, and Deputy Chief Jill Stevens and Deputy Chief Chris Papajuano. I can't say enough about the work that they're doing, especially with our officers. We know that the DNC is kicking off today, but yesterday we had a protest and a protest group out there, and our officers responded exactly the way that we trained them, to respect First Amendment activity. We were able to talk to the organizers in the beginning. They expressed exactly what they wanted. There was mutual respect there, and because of that, we didn't have any incidents. So just a great job, and I really want to thank the organizers for keeping the protest peaceful, because that's what we're looking for. They were able to have their voices heard. They were able to speak. We gave them that opportunity and a platform to do it, and we protected them while they were doing it. So we had officers out there on foot, bikes, so they were protecting the entire corridor, traffic, direction, making sure that the businesses were taken care of, but most of all, making sure that our citizens were safe while this protest happened. So we're expecting large protests throughout the city for the rest of the week. We're prepared for that. We hope for the exact same outcome for every protest, that everyone gets to express their First Amendment rights. We don't have any incidents. If that occurs, then we've had the most successful Democratic National Convention that we can imagine. So we would prefer not to have clashes. We would prefer not to have to make arrests if we don't have to. And we will avoid those things as long as we're not committing acts of vandalism or violence. We must protect our citizens, and we must protect our city. I drove the route yesterday, all day yesterday, last night, checked on a few things across the city. Our officers are out there. They're out there. They're highly visible. And we have officers not only along the corridors downtown, in and around the venues of the Democratic National Convention, but also in our neighborhoods to continue to protect our people who are living in areas where they're the most vulnerable. So we want to make sure that it's clearly understood that our officers are protecting the entire city, not just one location. So we're going to continue that. We're going to continue to keep our officers looking good, staying professional, because that's what we want, that professional interaction. And I just cannot say enough about how our officers responded yesterday. Just an excellent job, and I'm proud of the Chicago Police Department and the way that the Chicago police officers responded. We could not do this well if those officers didn't step up and work the way that we trained them to work, and they remembered their training, and we'll continue to work that way. With that, let me introduce Secret Service Deputy Special Agent in Charge, Derek Meyer.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. Thank you, Mayor Johnson, and thank you, Executive Director Tirado. I could not ask for better partners over the last year than you three. My name is Derek Meyer, and I am the Deputy Special Agent in Charge of the United States Secret Service's Chicago Field Office. The security plan for the 2024 DNC would not be possible without the help of our federal, state, and local partners. I'm proud to finally put that plan into action. The DNC is a national special security event, which means the federal government's full complement of resources are available to provide a safe and secure environment. I want to stress there is no better partner the Secret Service could have than the City of Chicago and the Chicago Police Department. Superintendent Snelling and CPD are world-class partners. The City of Chicago has had great success when it comes to hosting large events. Just this summer, the city hosted NASCAR, Lollapalooza, and the Air and Water Show. That's only to name a few. Like Chicago, the Secret Service also has a proven track record of securing big events.
This is the 79th National Special Security event that the Secret Service has hosted. This is the second this year that the Chicago Field Office will host. The Secret Service supports people's First Amendment rights to express themselves freely and lawfully. We're aware of activities planned throughout and during the convention and are working with the Chicago Police Department to make sure they are safe. There will be some impacts when it comes to traffic and parking, but we have done our best to minimize those disruptions through public outreach. I'm looking forward to a safe and secure DNC. Thank you.
We'll now open this up for questions.
We have microphones. Mary, start there. Tom, you can start.
Hi, Alice Gate of the Chicago Tribune. This question's for the mayor. Mayor Johnson, you had a recent interview in which you described the war in Gaza as genocidal. Can you talk about why come out now and use that label? And how do you reconcile that position with your role in also celebrating the Biden-Harris administration this week?
October 7th terrorist attack we condemned in very certain terms. The first major city to do that. The acts of terror that were executed by Hamas, we condemned them. We've also called for the releasing of hostages and for the end of this war. You can condemn terrorism and call for peace. It's actually very customary within our tradition here in Chicago. Dr. King called for that. People across America are calling for that, for the immediate releasing of hostages, the end of these acts of terror, and the end to this war. And I will continue to stand by that position because it is the moral position.
Good morning. Question for Superintendent Snelling. Sam Charles from the Chicago Tribune.
How you doing, Sam?
Good morning, Superintendent. Obviously, you know, the DNC goes through Thursday. Are days off canceled for all officers between now and Thursday? And is Friday the day expected to where things kind of get back to normal?
That's correct. We just want to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of manpower out there to deal with this. Obviously, though, we know that that can be a strain on officers and their families. This is why every district commander and every member of leadership has a wellness plan around officers, just to make sure that officers are hydrated, they're getting breaks, they get an opportunity to rest, that they're nourished. We know, again, that when we look at cognition, we want our officers to be well when they're responding out there. And yesterday was an example of that. You know, when our officers are well rested, when they know that they're being taken care of, they take care of others. So, yes.
Superintendent Julie Bosman with the New York Times. Were there any arrests related to protests last night? And do you intend to let the Poor People's Army march inside the security perimeter today? So
there, what I'll tell you about the arrest, there was an arrest of a 23-year-old woman. She was charged with defacement of property and resisting and obstructing a police officer. She was not inside of that march. It was separate from that march. So I'm not going to associate that one individual with the peaceful protest that was put together by that group. So there was one arrest, but it was not inside of that footprint. Oh, I'm sorry. And the second part of it, no one will be allowed within the secure perimeter of the DNC. All right. This is a matter of national security. We want to make sure that everyone is safe. We saw what happened in Pennsylvania. We're going to make sure that we secure everything so that doesn't happen here. We have a great partnership with the Secret Service. We're in constant communication with them. Our partner, Derek Meyer, just a phenomenal partner. Can't say enough about that. And we're communicating, and we're going to make sure that we protect that area.
Superintendent Snelling, Martin Koski, NPR. Yesterday, the spokesman for the coalition to march on the DNC said that regarding the length of the route, that they've been trying to get longer, that basically the size of the crowd dictates where people go, Chicago rules, implying that people might start departing the official route. What's your philosophy if people start going to side streets, that kind of thing?
Listen, the length of the route doesn't matter. We've seen early on with some of the protests that started last year, upwards of 10 to 15,000 people. And it wasn't about the length of the route. It was about the control efforts put in place. Number one, the organizers. The organizers in some of these protests have done a very good job policing themselves and policing each other. They've worked with us in partnership. We've talked to them because if we know what those routes are going to be and the direction they're moving, then we can do our best to ensure the safety of everyone within that group. If you watch us and if you watch the way that we've been training with our bikes, we have a way of keeping everybody in line and keeping everybody on the route. So this won't be a log jam. We're going to make sure that if anything happens that we have to call an audible on to make sure that everyone is safe, we will do that. But just keep in mind, there's traffic throughout our city. There are intersections that we have to make sure that everyone gets through safely so that there are no car accidents or someone who decides to drive into a crowd. So we're going to make sure that we protect everybody.
Good morning, Superintendent. Michelle Gallardo with ABC 7. My question for you is, and you already alluded to this, obviously yesterday you had your first chance to see how the training of officers would play out with, you know, the first of the many protests that is going to happen this week. But of course, today's the big day. It's going to be significantly more people, tens of thousands potentially versus hundreds. So is there any, I guess, difference in what we saw yesterday to what we will see today? Yesterday we saw the bike patrols. Certainly there was no riot gear in sight. I'm sure that was on purpose. But when you're dealing with potentially tens of thousands of people, does that change? Do the officers today, will we see them in protective gear? Are there any differences, you know, majorly in what we will see compared to yesterday?
No. What you're going to see, if we see more people, you will just see a fuller effect of what you saw yesterday. As far as riot gear, we don't need officers out there in riot gear if people are protesting peacefully. What has been questioned is, can the Chicago Police Department respond to First Amendment activity without arresting people or without it turning violent? Yes, we can. And there's no reason to have someone out in riot gear if no one's rioting. If people are out there having their voices heard, expressing their First Amendment rights, which we saw yesterday, there is absolutely no reason to be confrontational. We actually want people to speak out, say what they need to say, and it's not about agreeing with what anyone has to say, it's about respecting it. And we're going to respect people's constitutional rights, and we're going to make sure that we're not escalating anything. We want to make sure that this goes off safely and everybody gets the opportunity to have their voices heard.
Hi, Mayor. Heather Sharon, WTTW. Can you give us a preview of what you're going to tell the convention tonight, and what do you hope people, after they leave Thursday, Friday, will tell their friends about Chicago?
I would hope, thank you for that question. I would hope that people walk away from Chicago in love with the city as much as I'm in love with this city and as much as the people are in love with this city. And there are a lot of great reasons to be in love with this city. 20% of the world's fresh water is in our front yard through the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence. Electricity came to life here in the World Fair. You know, the city that launched, you know, the consciousness of America through the writings of Ida B. Wells. I want them to understand that profound history, from electricity to the Model T to Carnegie to quantum computing. That all rhymed, didn't it? Maybe I should say that tonight, Heather. But I want them to know that, you know, Chicago is a love story. A black Haitian immigrant, a Potawatomi woman at the banks of the river set up a trade post so that the entire world could come together and exchange ideas and hopes and aspirations. And that's what I want people to walk away with, and that's essentially what I'll articulate tonight.
Good morning. My question is for Superintendent Snelling, Carmen Morales with Univision. How many federal agencies and from other states are here assisting, and how are the resources being distributed inside and outside of the perimeter?
Well, I wish I could give you a number, but what I can tell you is I swore in a large number of mutual aid officers who came in from all around the state and Milwaukee. We also have the state police here. We have the Cook County police who are helping out with that. The Capitol Police are here. We have agencies from across the country here. Most of our mutual aid officers are from right within Illinois, and with Milwaukee being the outlier. They are in charge of a lot of the infrastructure. So a lot of the locations where we know need to be secured, this is where we have the mutual aid partners distributed. This frees up our officers to be out in the field because of the extensive training that those officers have. We would rather have our officers patrolling and responding to these incidents rather than having someone from outside of our agency do those things.
Chief Snelling, good morning. My name is Tarso with Bloomberg News. I have a question for you. Are you concerned about the protest that will happen outside the Israeli consulate on Tuesday? Their slogan is "Make it great like '68."
Well, listen, I'm concerned about a lot of things. And when we become concerned about things, the more important thing is what can we influence? All right, so what is our response going to be to any situation that happens? Listen, it's this simple. The Chicago Police Department is here to protect everyone in this city. We will protect people's rights, again, their First Amendment rights, their rights of expression. What we will not tolerate is intimidation. We will not tolerate violence. And we want every single person in this city to feel safe. And we will protect anyone from harm or danger. So anything that comes up and I've said it a million times, where we think there's a potential for violence, vandalism, we will put an end to that as soon as it starts.
Superintendent, we understand that some bricks were found in and around Union Park by officers in recent days. Have any more bricks been found?
Not to my knowledge, but you know, we keep an eye out for those things, because if we can stop that before it starts. Because look, when you have a large group of people who want to express their First Amendment rights, the larger number of that group are just simply here to do that. Sometimes you get lone wolf people, or you get a group that will infiltrate that group, and under that umbrella, they will try to commit acts of violence or try to escalate a situation. We're out there to stop that before it starts. So we keep an eye out for those types of things. So we're paying attention to that. And any intel that we get around those situations, we're proactive to stop it.
Good morning, Soup. Mac Leader, Minute Block, Chicago. Yesterday, about 200 protesters rallied outside a Navy pier, and at one point, protesters had actually disrupted the stage. I got up there and spoke. What allowed that to happen, and how do you ensure no similar disruptions happen throughout the week?
So what I will tell you is they were given the opportunity to do that by the group inside. So they were kind enough to allow these people the opportunity to speak. So that was an agreement. So any other, so that wasn't a security breach. So when we know that there's a possibility of a security breach, we'll make sure, because we have officers there to stop that from happening. But that was an agreement yesterday.
That's the last question.
Okay. Hey, Sean Mulcahy, Chicago Reader. I just wanted to follow up on the Poor People's Army. So my understanding was that the city was required to grant a permit to march right in front of, like on Madison Street. Could you just confirm like how that squares with not being able to get inside the security perimeter?
You would look into that. We're here. What I can tell you is this, because I don't have all of the information on that right now, so I don't want to give you any bad information. Here's what I will tell you. We know that we have people who will pop up and start to protest. Listen, we will handle that the same way that we handle everything else. We don't want to escalate a situation. And if all they want to do is have their voices heard and they're not disrupting anything, people will have the opportunity to express their First Amendment rights. So anything that happens like that, the spontaneous, will be there to handle it and keep it as peaceful as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
All right, everyone, you are watching Live Now from Fox. That was day one of the security updates from the Chicago Police and Secret Service. They're hoping to do it every day during the DNC in the mornings. You're watching Live Now. We'll take a 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments. And welcome back to Live Now from Fox as we get you ready for the DNC. But earlier today in Chicago, a massive protest was happening and really continues on right now through the city streets, getting closer to the United Center where the convention will be happening for the next 4 days. We do want to play out just some of the remarks from earlier here on Live Now.
-ORTIZ, pronouns she, ella. 4 years ago, Voces de la Frontera Action built a Latina and youth voter immigrant network that was critical in Wisconsin in defeating Trump's fascist administration. And we are committed to do that again as part of a broader movement to block the threat of a second-term Trump administration, more empowered and ready to implement mass deportations and strip away decades of social progress, including our very right to organize. But we stand here with all of you today to deliver a message to the Democratic Party that our commitment to defeating fascism does not mean that we do not make demands on the Democratic Party. We have waited too long for the promise of immigration reform for 11 million essential workers and their families who worked in the pandemic, yet are not treated as the heroes they are. We call on Harris and Walz to deliver on immigration reform in the first 100 days of the new administration. We stand in solidarity with Palestinians for an end to the funding of a genocidal war in Gaza. As immigrants, we too understand the role of the U.S. government in supporting dictatorships abroad to serve corporate interests, whether that is backing Israel to serve oil companies in the Middle East or banana companies in Guatemala in the 1980s that conducted their own genocidal war against a largely indigenous people, or economic policies like NAFTA that force people to migrate. We know that an independent movement from below that is in solidarity with each other is the only way we can build enough power to defeat fascism and advance a real democracy. Immigrant rights is women's rights. Immigrant rights is LGBTQ rights. Immigrant rights is workers' rights. Yes. Immigrant rights is human rights. Yes. Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Christine. Next up is Victoria Hinckley. Victoria is a student organizer with Tampa Bay Students for a Democratic Society. and was recently expelled from the University of South Florida for being a leader in the Solidarity Encampment on campus.
Hello, everyone. As Fayani said, my name is Victoria Hinckley. That's first name Victoria, V-I-C-T-O-R-I-A. Last name Hinckley, H-I-N-C-K-L-E-Y. I'm 22 years old. I'm a student organizer with Students for a Democratic Society, and I go to school at the University of South Florida in Tampa. Students for a Democratic Society is really proud to be a part of the coalition to march on the RNC and to be leading in the student contingent here today. And we're marching on the DNC to demand an end to all U.S. aid to Israel, to demand that the genocide in Palestine be ended now. We've seen continually the Biden-Harris administration support genocide abroad by funding the IOF, by funding the Zionist State of Israel, by continually sending arms and billions and billions of dollars to fund this genocide. And we've seen them also attack the student movement for Palestine here at home with passing bills against protesting, calling students terrorists, saying that we deserve to get deported, encouraging violence be used against us by the police on our own campus. And, this past spring, we saw a historic nationwide student movement for Palestine. We saw students build encampments at their campuses. And this was, a really historic student movement, a very historic anti-war movement supporting the liberation for Palestine, supporting demanding divestment from their universities who are complicit in this genocide. And we saw students come out in thousands to support this encampment. So we know that students across the country stand with Palestine. They're demanding an end to the genocide and an end to U.S. aid to Israel. And we also saw a very violent response from university administrations and from police. We saw, people be tear gassed at my own school in Tampa at our encampment. We were tear gassed and we had rubber bullets shot at us. Shame. Shame. So we saw this horrible violent response, but despite that, students still came out in droves. They didn't care if they were going to get tear gas. They didn't care if they were going to get arrested. They were there to stand with Palestine. They were proud to stand with the resistance. And after that encampment movement, we saw horrible political repression take place in the forms of attacks on the student movement. In my own chapter, we had my fellow SDSer Joseph Chari was suspended for leading the encampment that day at the University of South Florida, and he's an international student, so they're now threatening him with deportation. Shame. Shame. And I myself was expelled from the University of South Florida for standing with Palestine, for being active in my encampment movement, even though I was a single assignment away from graduating, from walking across the stage in my graduation ceremony. Shame. Shame. And Students for a Democratic Society has launched our national campaign to demand that our universities not get away with punishing students for being pro-Palestine. We're going to be calling in August 26th to August 30th to demand that students not be expelled and, demanding that our movements stop being attacked. And come fall, we're going to hit the ground running, ready to defend student protests for Palestine and continuing to demand divestment. We refuse to let our universities get away with funding a genocide in our name. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest.
Divest.
Thank you.
We will not stop, we will not rest. Thank you, Victoria. Next up is Sydney Loving. Sydney is a Dallas, Texas-based organizer and co-chair of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, who has been active in the Black Liberation Movement since 2015.
Yeah. Woo! Woo! Hi, everybody. Sydney Loving. Say and spell my name, right? Okay. S-Y-D-N-E-Y.
You don't have to crowd.
Sorry. S-Y-D-N-E-Y-L-O-V-I-N-G. So I had a lot of coffee, and I don't have a prepared thing. So if I ramble around, I know y'all can edit it and fix all of that. But yeah, let's get into it. I'm representing the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and our work is deeply rooted in the Black Liberation Movement. And there's a reason why the Black Liberation Movement has a very long history of solidarity with Palestine. There's a reason why everybody from Nelson Mandela to the Black Panthers was talking about Palestine, and it's not about, charity or anything like that. It's that we have a very deep understanding of how our struggles are connected, and it's very clear. It's not hidden. The same people that are getting rich off of genocide in Gaza are the same people that are invested in the oppression of Black people in this country. And as our movements against U.S. imperialism get stronger here or abroad, it strengthens each other. The solidarity strengthens each other, and we saw that too. There's a reason why in the Palestinian liberation movement they recognized that, and in 2020 the Palestinian movement was marching for George Floyd as well. We saw that in Dallas. So we understand that our struggles are connected, and our liberation is connected. So we're in full solidarity with the Palestinian resistance. We're not going to give that up or qualify that, and our freedom is connected. So yeah, anything.
Thank you, Sydney. I'm honored to introduce this next speaker, who's a very, very close friend of mine. And we share a political analysis, a political trajectory, and she represents a really important community in Chicago as well, and in the country. In-hae Choi is the former executive director of the Hana Center, a Korean organization that combines social services and community organizing.
All right, everyone, we do want to go out to Chicago live right now. We are getting some images. We are learning from Fox 32 in Chicago that protesters have breached a fence right now as security concerns continue. Let's listen on Live Now from Fox.
That's why I wanted to see if he had noticed any movement among the officers, because if you start seeing more and more get closer to those fences, then a game plan has been activated.
And it's nerve-wracking to hear that one police officer, had a gun drawn. Obviously, he said he thought that was just, a show of force. But we heard earlier that there are 17 different law enforcement types that have been working to prepare themselves for any rioting, protesting that might be going on in our city. What we are hoping, as you can see now, we can see the police officers closer than they were before, Terrence. They are now putting helmets on. So they are getting ready for anything. Nate was saying some of the protesters, once this happened, were turning around and going back to Union Park to march back where they originally started. But you see officers putting on gas masks and putting on helmets. Obviously, they're trying to be ready just in case. We are hoping it does not go beyond where it has
and you
already.
heard Nate say as well, you heard a couple of people on megaphones or whatever device they're using to communicate to the crowd, trying to get them to calm down. Organizers-wise, trying to get the protesters to calm down, because again, we saw this happen live. We've seen it, the protest slow, it's been peaceful on its way up there, and just in that moment, we checked in with Nate at the beginning this half hour. That's when we saw them trying to rip that fence down or tear it down, rocking it back and forth. Saw one person with a hammer as well, trying to knock nails out or knock certain things out that were holding the fence into place. Once we saw them get that one fence down, then a second came down, then a third, then a fourth, and I think Nate said we're up to 5 or 6, I believe.
And you saw that some of those people actually waving the protesters like, come in, obviously trying to get them to make the situation a little more heated than the original group that had put this together had planned. But as you can see right now, we just saw officers putting on helmets, putting on gas masks. So far, tensions are definitely rising, but we're hoping it won't get to be too out of hand. Nate, what's happening right now? What can you tell us?
Hey guys, I'm here. So we have now several reporters and camera folks have now come across this fencing so we can give you a different vantage point. Within the last couple of minutes, Sylvia and Terrence, as you described, we have seen officers put on what appears to have been gas masks, and so the fear now is that they may use some type of deterrent to get the crowd away. Again, on the other side of the fence, if Todd can just turn the camera around, this is where the protest ended. The march ended, I should say, here at Park 567. The group was here for about 30 minutes. Everything was peaceful, no issues at all. But then this fencing that you're seeing right now, several panels of that fencing was torn down before you then saw a lot of people jump the fencing and then start throwing rocks that we've learned at police right now. We have seen a larger response from police. Again, this location for those folks from the west side that may be familiar is right outside of the Pilgrim Rest Missionary Baptist Church, located right at Walcott Avenue. I am standing on what I believe to be Washington Street right now. Yes, this is Washington Street, and so we do see authorities, Secret Service agents, police, out-of-state police communicate as well, trying to get a handle on this crowd. On the other side of this fencing, we also see some journalists as well, but even right now, you can see, Todd, turn the camera around just so you can see another group still trying to tear down more fencing. I want you all to see this. This is what we've been seeing for the last couple of minutes. They are resilient. They are not obeying the police's orders. They are not obeying Secret Service orders. They are taking upon themselves with masks on to disrupt, to tear down the fencing, to disobey the security guidelines that have been distributed by the city. Again, at least on this side, we are still seeing a number of Chicago police. Todd, if you can turn the camera to the right, you see dozens of officers. Don't be not mistaken, Chicago police are here and they are ready. This is all strategic by the Chicago Police Department on both sides of this perimeter. They have not moved here yet to move this crowd, but they will not let them get past this fencing into the United Center. Again, for those unfamiliar with this area, we are probably 2 blocks north of the United Center, where fencing has been erected. As we've just shown you over the last 10 minutes or so, several of the fencing panels has been torn down by these agitators, some with bats in hand, many of them with their faces covered. I will tell you, from covering some of these events previously, we've been able to recognize the agitators by the ones who typically may cover their face, right? And they don't want to be on camera. They don't want to talk to you. I'm not saying that's everybody, but from what we've seen today, the ones that are causing the disruption, the vandalism, the violence, these are folks with their faces covered. I don't know which group they are a part of. They're not really communicating with us, but we do know that a number of law enforcement as well as journalists are out here now trying to report to you at home what the situation is like. Terrence and Sylvia.
You know, as we watch this, it was, and you're live, and we're on the news live, and the fencing was up, and all of a sudden it wasn't anymore. It's not so much that the fencing was not put up properly or came down easily, is it? These people came with things in their backpack to make this happen.
Yes. Sylvia, you are absolutely right. We have video of a gentleman taking what appeared to be some type of like sledgehammer out of his backpack and opening one of the fences. I will tell you that I'm starting to see, I did see like a chain wrapped around one of the fencing where they put like a lock attached to it, so even if they tore it down, it would still be connected to a lock. But police police are right now still working to disperse the crowd. We have not seen, just to be clear, we have not seen police at all agitate the situation in terms of fighting back or anything like that. We saw demonstrators or agitators throw rocks at officers, but the officers, as you're seeing them right now, have stood in position. The only change that we've seen outside of one officer who appeared to just raise his firearm, we've seen some officers put on what appeared to be gas masks, but there's been no gas sprayed or anything like that. In fact, for the last 10 minutes or so, or however long we've been on with you all, they have allowed this group to continue to stay here in what is the perimeter outside of the United Center. I'm sure it won't be for long, but again, this is a very strategic move by the Chicago Police Department. Superintendent Larry Snelling has said all along leading up to this that they've trained for this, that they have prepared, and so all of their responses, they want Chicagoans to know, not just Chicagoans, but delegates, all of the visitors to our city. They want folks to know that they are indeed safe and they have a handle on this. Right now, we're continuing to see and hear people chant as some are still trying to tear down, additional fencing. It is a sad sight to see out here, but that really is what's happening right now. Let me give you one more. Okay, so Chicago police right now are running toward this area. We're going to get out of the way, but they're running toward this area, appears with helmets in their hand. I believe they are about to stop the crowd. They are about to move everyone out the way. You see it, they are probably 300 feet from us. They're running with helmets on. I'm sure to move us out of this perimeter. And so we're going to keep the camera on this, but we're going to just move out of the way. Give us 1 second, guys, as we move.
Thank you for that, Nate. Dane Placco is also out there. Let's go out to Dane. I don't know what you're seeing where you are, Dane, but the pictures we're seeing from Nate and his cameraman are incredible. What can you tell us?
Yeah, we're standing on Washington Boulevard right now where they broke through the fencing. And as you can see back there, probably 30 or 40 Chicago police officers in riot gear. They were jogging down the street towards the west where we're located. They have stopped their run right now and have formed a line across the street over the two lanes. You can probably hear the people chanting behind me. There's a large number of protesters that broke down a fence on the north side of Washington and are standing within the confined area. There are two fences along Washington, one on the south side of the street, one on the north side of the street. So they were able to breach the north fence, but not the south fence. And now we have the Chicago police, as you see, walking towards us. This is going to be an interesting confrontation. The protesters behind me have their fists raised in the air, are chanting. They are eager for some sort of a confrontation here with police, it would seem. And the police are eagerly walking in this direction as well. I'm going to start getting a little bit closer to it. There you go. They're about 50 feet, 60 feet away right now and continuing to march west on Washington Boulevard. Let's see what they do when they get here. They're obviously going to have to move a lot of the media out of the way first. There's a line of cameras. And now we have some of the protesters coming to the front of the line, yelling obscenities at the police. I saw something thrown in the direction of the line of police. There you see one officer giving instructions. Oh, there's somebody just threw a can from the other side of the fence. The crowd agitating for a fight here, it would seem to appear. And the police are certainly looking to give them what they might be looking for. Although the police are just backing up everybody. There you see protesters in front being pushed back forcibly by the Chicago police officers in riot gear.
Vacate the area right now.
We're being told by Glenn Brooks with the Chicago Police Department, we're being ordered to vacate this area. but there's really nowhere to vacate to at this point. There's only a small breach in the fence on the north side of the street, and it is blocked right now by protesters. There you see there's some pushing and shoving. There's some confrontation. The officers on the front of the line are using their batons, holding them one in each hand across their chest, and occasionally as they step forward, pushing a protester. Tom Ahern from the Chicago Police Department now telling us to move into the park to the north, Park 578. Again, the problem with that is that the protesters are blocking the breached portion of the fence, and we have nowhere to get, no way to get back into that area right now. Okay, now they were clearing a spot, and they're going to ask us to move it through the fence into the park so that the police can begin making arrests here. You see somebody just threw a sign over the fence into the area where the police are standing. The officers, again, shoulder to shoulder, crossing 2 lanes of Washington Boulevard. There goes another sign. So far, we've seen signs, cans. I haven't seen any bottles or any heavy objects thrown at the police. And behind me, which you can't see right now, there's just as many officers behind us as there are in front of us. So the protesters who breached the fence are now pinned in. And I see that there are apparently some arrests beginning to be made off to the right here. Some people got pushed to the ground. There's a protester on the ground.
Let's go. Let's go. Everybody, let's go. Hold down.
We're getting pushed towards the exit of this area. I'm going to step out of the way.
No one's listening. Right through that door.
There you see the police officers trying to move people towards that small exit point.
You need to clear this area. Tell the people to clear.
All right, this is Andrew Kraft here. Thank you to my colleague, Mike Paish, also to our colleagues there at Fox 32 in Chicago. It's getting a little tense, a little hairy there on the streets of Chicago. As you can see, many of these Chicago police officers have moved in to move back the crowd of Gaza War protesters who we are told have breached one of these security fences here. We have a live picture yet again there. You can see some of them atop the barriers, at least one of the protesters there. It's obviously going to be a key feature and storyline of the DNC all throughout the course of the week. Remember, the DNC will be underway in just about 15 or 20 minutes or so here. We'll keep an eye out on some of these protests going on outside of the United Center. I want to thank everyone for being with us here. It is 3 o'clock here on the West Coast, 5 o'clock there in Chicago. I'm Andrew Kraft, and we're just getting started here. You're going to be watching all of the speeches there on the stage with so many of these prominent Democrats capped off by President Joe Biden tonight. From start to finish, in their entirety. We're going to be having limited commentary and analysis and insight today, and you're just going to watch it as it happens, as you always do here on Live Now from Fox. We do have a live picture there of the stage. The stage is set. We have been going over who some of the speakers will be tonight. Like I said, President Biden will be introduced by not only his wife, the First Lady, but also his daughter, Ashley Biden. So this is a live picture here. Don't worry, we are keeping our eye out on the very tense protests happening right outside of the United Center. But we want to talk politics here as well tonight. This is day one. For the people is the theme ahead of the Biden speech tonight. We got a great panel of experts who are on standby, and we're going to bring them in just a moment to talk about what the political dynamics are going into tonight. As you know, and I've said it many, many times, that the Democratic Party looks much different than it did 1 month ago. And so we'll be breaking down some of those key factors going into tonight. Remember, tonight may have looked very, very different than what it is right now. So let's do that. Let's bring into the conversation here our friends at the New York Post, A.G. Gankarski, but also political analyst Brian Sobel. They have been helping us make sense of this political season, and they join us in just a moment. Like I said, you're watching the stage there. It is set. Speakers will be happening in just no time here, and let's bring them into the conversation. All right, A.G., Brian, thanks for being with us here. Let's get right to it. You were just watching what's happening outside the United Center. These Gaza War protesters, some of them have breached one of these fences there in the security perimeter. Many of them have been shouting, "Genocide, Joe." Brian, I'll start with you. Does this take away from the overall message that Democrats are trying to project this week, that they're a united party in the wake of Biden withdrawing from the ticket almost exactly a month ago? Brian, does everything happening outside negate that message?
No, not at all. I think you've got what was expected, which is these protests. Had this been a Republican convention and a Republican president who was in the same position as Joe Biden in terms of supporting Israel and helping to prosecute a war and all of that, you'd have the protests at the Republican convention. So this is not not a surprise to see this. It'll be interesting to see how much they want to test the police there in Chicago. And of course, for any student of history, you go back to the 1968 Democrat convention in Chicago that ended up being one of the most violent in American history.